Hello, guys, and welcome to my week 3 picks for CastCast. I want to welcome you in, but without further ado, let's get to who I think is going to win the games on Sunday. First up, we have the Chargers and the Steelers. Looking at the Chargers and the Steelers, obviously two unbeaten teams. The Chargers playing the Panthers last week, and then also playing, as you can see, Las Vegas week 1, and then the Steelers beating Atlanta in a shocker week 1, and then Denver last week. Now, looking at these two, the main thing I guess that I want to say is that neither offense has been like too dynamic or too explosive. Obviously, you look at the Chargers and it's a very run heavy attack. Obviously, that is what they want to run on their offense. They have two really great tackles for pass protection, which is good. You keep those guys fresh. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, who was drafted this year as like the top tackle in the draft. And of course, J.K. Dobbins signs, and he's one of the leading backs in the league. And, I think it's a good thing that they have the run to lean on because Justin Herbert, while he will play, has an ankle injury. And it's interesting because you look at what their team, what people were going to say they were going to struggle with was passing. But Herbert has been very efficient, as we should expect. And Quentin Johnston looks a lot better than his rookie season last year. Ladd McConkey, very high PFF grading, very good efficiency. And then, you know, just an overall solid offense, I think. Obviously, on their defense, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack kind of forcing pressure and that banged up linebacker, outside linebacker, or the linebacker room. Um, and then their secondary, I think one of the better ones in the league and slightly underrated, keeping these teams to low scoring. Obviously, looking at Pittsburgh, as we all know, only one passing touchdown within 2 weeks. Russell Wilson has been hurt with a quad injury, and Justin Fields has been made to start in his place, who I think is a lot better of a decision than, people would say. And he's passing the ball very efficiently, 30 of 43 this year, and they have a very good 1-2 punch with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. George Pickens has looked like a true number one this year. Last year, obviously, he had the drama. I still think there's things that I've seen that I need to see him work on, such as like run blocking and that sort of thing on the outside. But otherwise, I'm overall very impressed with him and the way he's kind of stepped up this year and is, being more accountable for his actions. Obviously, this defense, TJ Watt, monster, only one sack through 2 games, but a lot of pressure and a lot of, difference making. Cameron Hayward and then even, Ogunjobi doing really well. And the secondary doing very well. Essentially, I wouldn't say clinching the win for them against Denver, but without that pick in the end zone, it could have been a different game. It could have been one of these where we're talking an overtime game and who knows who wins at that point. Chris Boswell having an incredible year. I think, with the way that this team plays, it is paramount that they have a great kicker, and he is a great kicker. Looking at this game, I think it's really hard to predict because obviously both offenses are they're just not, explosive or high scoring, at least to this point. Obviously, with Pittsburgh, to me, it looks like on paper they could be in a more explosive offense, and that sort of thing. And I think that with Justin Fields playing and the pass rush of the Chargers being pretty good, and them maybe needing to have that explosive play, I could expect to see some play action from Fields quite a bit this game. trying to get it deep to Pickens or to somebody, to hopefully step up and make a huge play. Well, and I mean they obviously don't have, a lot of explosive guys, but Pickens and I think Calvin Austin the third, I think he can get lost downfield. He's a shorter guy, but also a faster guy. And I think that Fields' downfield ball is somewhat underrated. People were saying he can't pass, but he's got a pretty good clip, a completion percentage for someone who can't pass, in my opinion. Obviously, it's going to be very tough as well for Los Angeles to just run it with J.K. Dobbins. I think this is their first, really big test. Because as we've seen, not only do they get pressure on the quarterback, but they have a very stout run defense. You can't just all willy-nilly run over the Steelers, because they play the smash mouth defense. With that being said, I think this is going to be an incredibly close game, barring some, big fluke. But I think with the way that Joe Alt and Slater are playing, I think it's going to be hard to get pressure on Herbert. And, if you have to rely on his arm, at the end of the game to close a drive or get them in field goal range and that sort of thing, I'm taking the Chargers. The one sort of hurdle I think that they need to, get over, obviously, is that it's a long trip across the country to Pittsburgh. And who knows if that's going to play a role in the game, obviously. But I think that, this is overall, a somewhat young team on offense. And then, I mean, their defense, has plenty of veterans. So I think, I think that they should be, good in winning this game. My final score for this game is I think that it's going to be 17-13 final score in favor of the Chargers. Looking at the next game, a very interesting game as well. Another pair of undefeated teams. We have the Texans visiting the Vikings in Minnesota. Obviously, the Vikings beating the Giants week 1, that was kind of like, oh, well, we knew the Giants were going to be like a bad team, but we were still kind of impressed with how Darnold played. At least I think most people would be, because he's been considered a wash for a while now, but is finally on a decent team. Looking at the Texans, they obviously beat the Bears last week in prime time. It wasn't that great of a game for them. A lot of penalties I expect them to kind of clean up. And, looking at the Texans and looking at the Vikings, they've both gotten pressure on the quarterback. And then, and that sort of thing. Obviously, CJ Stroud against Darnold. Two guys who were picked, literally in the first 2 picks of their respective drafts. Joe Mixon has a slight injury, which is concerning to me. Nico Collins, slight injury. But I still think that, Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs has been kind of quiet. Obviously, he's like the newest wide receiver to this group. They brought him in to kind of have a more veteran guy and a more clutch guy. I could see him being a bigger role. But I think Nico Collins is a tougher guy, a guy that's incredibly hard to defend. So even if he's not 100% healthy, I think he's a dog, and I think that he, is always trying to go and make the plays. Dalton Schultz has been doing well. Just overall, a lot of weapons on the Texans, which we know. And, pretty good protection on this team. And then obviously their defense. I think a lot of guys they're playing hard-nosed football like you'd expect from a DeMeco Ryans defense. Looking at Minnesota, you obviously still have Aaron Jones healthy, which I think is huge for them. I think that they're going to have to keep the pressure off Darnold. Not to say that they don't have 2 great tackles themselves with Darrison O'Neal and that sort of thing. I think that their defense, while, many people say that they don't have, they don't have that much pass rush or whatever else. It's like Jonathan Bullard and then Grenard, and then even Van Ginkel. I think that they have, And then even Dallas Turner, who's had a limited role, which I think is kind of wild. I think that they have a lot of depth, which keeps these guys fresh. Which in a game with the Texans, I think that's huge. If you've only got like two or three guys that can get to the quarterback, and they just essentially are able to tire you out, it's going to be a tough game. But they've got plenty of depth. They've got good guys. The Texans as well. I think they're not going to be able to run the ball like they did against the Bears, whose run defense has been shoddy up until this point of the season. Blowing a big run week 1 against Pollard, and then last week just Mixon really kind of owning them in a way, like being able to just chunk them after chunk. No real huge runs that I'm like are game changing, but the Vikings, I think, have a good defense, and they've really fixed it from like 2 years ago. You know, um, but looking at this, I think the Texans were shooting themselves a lot in the foot last week. I think that DeMeco Ryans is going to make sure that they clean that up, and I think that they are going to win this game, and the Vikings are going to get handed their first loss. And with that, I think that the score is going to be 24-20 in favor of the Texans. But moving on, we have the Eagles Saints. The Eagles losing kind of a just dumb loss to me against the Falcons on Monday night last week. And obviously having like won a game where they scored a lot against the Packers in Brazil week 1. But overall, just kind of passive defense, which I'm like, what are you doing? You've got a very Mauler-esque and hardcore physical defense, at all levels. And it's like, obviously, the Saints, probably the biggest 2-0 shocker team we've seen this year, where, you get your new coordinator, which I forget his name, but he's, putting up mad points. And it's like, whether it was the Panthers or the Cowboys, who it's like night and day with the defenses on those teams, I feel like, oh, we're just going to put up mad points and have the number 1 offense up until this point in terms of points scored. One thing I will say is that I think that the amount of points they've scored is a little inflated due to the fact that they've had good defense that has played and gotten them, turnovers in the ball and that sort of thing. So they don't always have to drive the length of the field, but they're making sure that they're capitalizing off those turnovers. Now the Eagles, I would say Hurts has looked shaky with potential picks as well as throwing picks, and just, not great ball security, I guess, when throwing the ball in the air. They are giving the advantage to the Eagles in this game, which I think is kind of a shocker. But you look at these teams, and it's like, I think with the Eagles, is, let me look at this. Is AJ Brown playing here? Let me see this. He's still doubtful. I feel like he's not playing. I don't know what to say about it, except for that, like, the offense looked extremely flat without him. And he is just such a talented player, which is why we all screamed fools to the Titans when they got rid of him. And it's like, this team just looks overall way worse. It's like kind of like the Trent Williams effect when he's not playing for the Niners. Like, this team's abysmal without Brown. So it's like, with that, I'm gonna lean Saints. And their home crowd is as crazy as any in New Orleans. And I think that the Eagles are going to have to overcome a ton of noise, which I just don't think they're going to do, to be honest with you. So I'm going to take Saints, and it's like, yeah, I'm probably going to give them over 30 points scored. You know what? We'll say 37. We're going to say, or 37, let me think. Yeah, we're going to say 37 points scored, because if the Cowboys had issues getting after, Derek Carr, then I'm sorry, but the Eagles, I mean, while they're, pretty close competition wise and physicality and, creating pressure, I don't think they're as good as the Cowboys. Even the Cowboys looked bad against this O line, getting pressure on Carr. So yeah, I'm taking Eagles 37. And I think the Eagles score like 17. And this comes as like a sort of statement loss against the Eagles that, hey, this team better get it better get its stuff together, or hey, it is going to be a long season, especially if AJ Brown can't come back. And I just know how bad hamstring injuries can be and how hard they are to overcome, just being, a Packers fan. Speaking, and then we go to the Broncos against the Buccaneers. Obviously, the Broncos 0-2, really struggling offensively with Bo Nix. Still up to this point, none of the rookie QBs starting or playing, or none of the rookie QBs that were drafted this year have scored a touchdown up until this point. Bo Nix coming close. His defense giving him some opportunities and that sort of thing. But overall, just kind of a lack of weapons on this team. I think that they're still trying to figure it out. They're not running the ball as much as I thought that they would be, with a young QB and like Sean Payton, that sort of thing. But Sean Payton, I think, he loves going through the air. Like I mean, even in, New Orleans when he was there, it's like they would do like short screenplays and stuff with the running back and like scheming and that sort of thing. But like overall, it's like a passing attack, pass, which I don't think that, Bo Nix isn't the wrong guy for that, but he's got to learn it, and he's got to understand his team that is, just doesn't have a lot of talent. And then you've got the Buccaneers, who clearly, they look like a very really well coached team. I think that people underestimate them. To me, they're the clear favorite for the NFC South. The Falcons don't look like it because they haven't put everything together, even though they've got their QB. Panthers obviously no. And I mean, New Orleans, maybe New Orleans, actually. I guess, I don't know how I just completely forgot about them. But like, those two teams, albeit what it looked like it was going to be a weak division coming into the year, are playing better than I think anybody could have given them credit for or predicted. And the Buccaneers are going to win this game. Obviously, it's at their home. The Broncos just don't have the talent. The Buccaneers well coached, as well as a good offense. And it's like, if a team that like the Lions couldn't get a lot of pressure on Baker, and they have, a very quick and rising star who, you could argue is going to join that upper echelon of elite pass rushers in Hutchinson, I don't think the Broncos are going to be able to pressure him enough to the point where they're not able to pass downfield with Godwin and Evans. So yeah, Buccaneers, I'm going to take them. I think that they score high 20s. We'll take we'll give them 4 touchdowns this game, 28, and I think the Broncos are going to score like 13. Moving on, now we do have my beloved Packers visiting the Titans in Tennessee. I think that this game, I do think that Love plays, you guys. He's been limited, but he has been throwing it, and in practicing, he's been limited, but I think that, obviously he's going to have to play. I think if Malik Willis was going to play, there'd be some emotion there playing his former team a little bit, even though he didn't play that much for them. He was obviously there for, a couple years. But I don't think that the Packers are going to be able to just, hand the ball off the amount of times that they did, like they did last week against the Colts. The Titans have a lot better of a defense. They have, goodness. They have goodness, I'm sorry. I'm losing my train of thought really hard. I think that Tennessee just has an overall better defense. They went out and they fixed a lot. They fixed a lot, in the off season or whatever. And you look at this defense, and obviously L'Jarius Sneed, brought in from the Chiefs, and then it's like Awuzie, and just revamping their secondary and that sort of thing, and keeping their safeties. But overall, they just have a defense to me that like is very well balanced. There's not really a lot of holes, and you're gonna need a guy that's gonna be able to pass it efficiently like a lot more. And their offense, Will Levis to me looks like he's got talent and he's got what it takes to be in the league, but he's just got to cut down on these turnovers. And that is the other thing that I'll say is that obviously the Packers, they lead the league in picks up until this point. 6 turnovers total and 5 picks, which obviously last week a lot of it came, a lot of their picks kind of came down to that Richardson needed to try and force the ball downfield. But then it's like you also had opportunity, you had 2 picks against Hurts, in week 1, and obviously they were never really playing from too much from behind if when they were, and in that sort of thing. I also think that, the O-line of the Titans has been a little bit shaky. I think that they just have a lack of talent there. I don't think that they're terrible. I think they're better run blockers than anything, from what I've seen on the Titans. But Will Levis has gotten pressure on him quite a bit, which I think is one reason why you're resulting in interceptions and rushed decisions. So with that, I think that the Packers do win this game. I am obviously assuming that Love plays, but I think that like with him practicing and that sort of thing, if it was that big of a long shot, he wouldn't be practicing. And they said that he was almost ready to be able to play last week. So essentially, if he has to wear an ankle brace, but it's like I think that overall I think that he's going to play and he's going to come out and they're going to be able to scheme some guys open and do a lot of different things to throw this defense off balance. But I like the way, my Packers are playing. I think it was a huge statement win, and I think that they're ready to try and, take control of like their record this game, whereas Tennessee, I don't think it's something that you're going to be able to fix overnight with the way that the O-line is playing, and then your quarterback isn't responding accordingly. And I don't think that Levis is going to be able to run very much due to the fact that like the Packers have played, Hurts and then Richardson, and Levis is mobile but less mobile than those guys, and they weren't able to, run that much. Those games. Yeah, I'm taking Packers, and I think that we win 24, I want to say 17 as a joke because that's what the score of every Titans game has been in. But I think that they do 24-13 this game. Now looking to the next game, we got Giants Browns. I think that this is a huge trap game for the Browns. They win last week against a Jaguars team that to me like, oh, they can't put it all together. I don't understand I don't know what it is. Is it the offensive scheme? Probably. I think Lawrence has the talent. He does make, good throws at times that it's like, oh yeah, this is, very low margin for error, but then it's like, oh, there's other times when it's like, oh, he just has a completely dead half of football where it's like, oh, you're scoring like practically no points. No points or very minimal. So it's like the Giants, they obviously put up, quite a bit more of a fight last week against the Commanders, and they are traveling to the Browns. I guess the one thing that I'll say, and the reason I'm going to give it to the Browns, is obviously they still have that defense. And the Giants O line, I mean, are they going to hold up? I'm this is the game. This is one of those I'm not going to talk about very much, but it's like I think it's a huge trap game for the Browns if they just happen to like really falter again or something, or whatever else. So I'm taking, yeah, I'm going to take, I'm going to take Cleveland in this game, and I'm going to say they win by. I'm going to say they win by 7. I think that this isn't going to be that big of a scoring game because I honestly do like, I guess, who the I do like who the Giants have on defense. Like their defense is definitely like the strength of this team, no shit. But yeah, I don't think that the Browns are going to score a ton of points cuz I mean, offensively they're kind of doo-doo if I'm being real, and they still don't have Nick Chubb. They had Nick Chubb, maybe I'd give them a bit more. But I'm going to say that the Browns get 2 touchdowns, a field goal, so 17 to, I'm going to say 10. I think that the Giants can score 1 touchdown and a field goal, and that's my prediction here. Bears Colts. Now here's a game that I'm like, who wins this? You kind of look at Richardson, you kind of look at Caleb, and they're definitely not the same player. I think that Richardson he's definitely played better because he has an actual like passing touchdown. But then you look at Caleb and everyone screams generational talent. The throws that he makes are kind of like, what is the deal here? And the Colts, obviously their run defense has been really bad, but the Bears don't really run it. They don't really run it. And it's just kind of bizarre to me. Like, Odunze hasn't really done that much this year. Obviously, last week would have been his best chance to kind of prove, like, hey, I'm like at least the second best option on this team. I think it's too steep of a hill against his competition for him to prove he's the number one, unless he really, comes out and has like a Moss-esque type thing where it's like, oh, this guy's clearly better than DJ Moore and Allen. Allen obviously missing time. I need to see if he's honestly like playing here. Let me look at the depth chart here, and he is questionable still. Odunze also has, questionable injury. And then you have the O-line of the Bears, which is banged up, and they haven't been able to really protect Caleb that much. I don't, obviously on the blitzes last week, but it's like, whether that's Caleb's inability to like shift the line or the center's inability or whatever it is, it's just kind of wild to me. But yeah, the Bears have ultimately relied on their defense, and that's why I think this is such a crapshoot of a game to try and predict, is that you've got a team that like, the Bears clearly look like they've been, winning potentially because of their defense and their, the special teams with their 1 win. But then you've got, the big playability of Richardson and his ability to escape, and he's the most mobile quarterback that obviously the Bears, will have played this season. Who knows if he's going to be able to break contain and beat him with his legs where he doesn't have to throw. But I hate to say it, but I do think that I think the Bears win this game. Maybe this is when their run game finally picks up. DeAndre Swift can have a game. Khalil Herbert, who they plug in occasionally, can have a game, and whatever else. But it's just kind of nuts to me that the Bears were so overhyped, and then it's like, and then you've got, a crazy game by the Colts week 1 against, the Strouds and the Texans, so it's like you'd think that they off of that game they would be playing better because the Texans are a good team, but it just hasn't been the case. It's been really like sporadic. Same with the Bears. Like the only reason I feel like they, and I said this, that they beat the Titans week 1 was because of a free touchdown given to them off of a pick six. But it's like they are making opportunist kind of stuff happen on defense, and it seems like they just aren't really fatiguing when they're on the field very much. They're constantly looking for the opportunity. So with that being said, I think the Bears win this game. I don't think it's going to be pretty unless they finally fix a bunch of things, which seems wild to me. But I think that they win this game. I'm gonna say 20 to I'm gonna say 20 to 10 against the Colts in favor of the Bears, as much as I hate to say that. Moving on, we have Panthers Raiders. The Panthers starting Dalton, as everyone knows. Oh, is this the end of Bryce Young? I don't think it is. I think the Panthers are just a bad organization. I think that their coach is going to get fired, whether it be in the season or after. Like, there's no way this guy holds the job. And if he somehow does, I question, like, the GM and the ownership, of the team. Like, there's just, so many things you have to fix on this team. And I'm not saying that having a rookie head coach and getting a new GM is going to necessarily fix it and that sort of thing, but there's just, the Panthers just can't compete at any level. And with that, the Raiders coming off with a crazy win last week. Like, what in the world? Oh, the Raiders should be honestly 0-2. But obviously, the O-line of the Panthers, people are saying, like, isn't the problem that it was Bryce Young? And I'm like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think that they're still kind of shoddy and bad on the O-line. And the Raiders, Max Crosby obviously last week had to go up against one of the toughest customers. Or not last week, week 1, had to go up against Joe Alt, and he couldn't do anything. But Joe Alt is proving that he is, that guy that's just gonna be like, yeah, you're not getting past me. And it's like, who do the Panthers have that even, reach, are close to that sort of caliber of tackle? So yeah, I'm gonna take Raiders. I think it's gonna be a stomping, to be honest with you. I think, a stomping in terms of like the Raiders. I think I think that they're going to score 23-6. I don't think that they give up a touchdown to this Panthers offense. Looking at Dolphins Seahawks. Now we have Thompson playing. We have Thompson playing. They brought in Huntley, but Tua's on IR. A-Chain's finally fully healthy. Hill, Waddle, Berrios, Jonnu Smith. And overall, an O-line that's pretty good. I think that with over a week of practice and learning, Thompson could play better. He's a younger guy. It's obviously going to be kind of a huge what if. He is going up against a defense that is very talented in the Seahawks, and it is in CenturyLink, which hard place to play with the 12th man. And, looking at their defense, I like who they have, but they've still proven to be susceptible to the throw. Being susceptible to the throw, I don't think it's good when it's like you got guys like, Metcalf, and then you've got, you've got guys like Kenneth Walker, who they do say is questionable, but he's going to play. Lockett's been having a year. JSN. Even Noah Fant, doing well. Charles Cross, apparently the highest PFF graded left tackle we have this year, which is, really, really good for them. When they have an immobile quarterback like Geno Smith. Looking at their defense, I mean, Rick Woolen playing, crazy out of his mind. Devin Witherspoon still really good. And just overall a very well coached defense. Led by head coach McDonald. So it's like overall, even though the Seahawks, even though the Seahawks, they, have kind of had a shaky games where it's like, are they going to win? Are they going to do this? Are they going to put it together on offense and that sort of thing? I think that they do beat a Dolphins team that is obviously like struggling, just coming off a tough loss. They lost, a vital part of their offense in Tua, who I think just knows all the ands, ifs, and things with his offense. And obviously Thompson, it's going to be hard for him to come in and just, throw these dead accurate passes right to the wide receivers to hit them in stride and, between players and that sort of thing. And I mean, barring that they somehow get completely unleashed to where the Seahawks can't defend, I don't see the Dolphins winning this game. And I'm going to take the Seahawks and I'm going to give them 20 points to 13 with the Dolphins. Looking at this game, Ravens-Cowboys. Obviously, the Ravens, as we know, have had a tough start to the season. Barely losing to the Chiefs opening night and then losing to the Raiders last week. Off of right? Or wait a minute. Yeah, the Raiders last week. What am I? I thought I was completely going mad. I thought that was a different team. But the Raiders, playing their minds out, and the Ravens, I mean, they scored a good amount of points, and this game looks to me like it would be a heavyweight showdown, before the year that people have marked on like, oh, a measuring stick for the Cowboys. And don't get me wrong, it's a measuring stick, but it's going to be like, can they weather the storm? That is going to be a very determined Lamar Jackson. Can they defend? Can they get a control on him when he's running around and doing whatever he wants? Can they stop Likely, who I think is, quickly emerging as one of the top tight ends, playing the way that he is? And is the lack of run game from the Cowboys going to really screw them to the point where it's like, is that going to be able to carve up a Raven defense? I don't think so. I think this Raven defense is going to be licking their chops to, be able to face Dak and really like kick his butt. Because I think that it put a target on this team's back. It put a target on this team's back in the Cowboys when he got such a fat deal. And it's one of those wild things to me that it's like, I think the same sort of thing happened with Kirk Cousins, where it's like teams are gunning for him because they're like, oh yeah, this guy got paid this amount of money. Let's bring our A game and really make it tough for him. So it's like, guys get paid this big money and it puts an added amount of pressure on them, type of thing. Where it's like, oh, you expect them to play, like playoff caliber, quarterbacks at that point. And is this shoddy run defense of the Cowboys going to be able to stop King Henry? I don't think so. So even at home, and it's like, who cares? Home obviously is an advantage for you guys. You guys got stomped by the Saints. I think the Ravens come in here and they make a statement win saying, we're back and we are going to not let off on the pedal. And I think that Lamar Jackson's going to prove that they're not going to let off the pedal. So I think the Ravens come in and they beat the Cowboys. And it might be bold to say, but I think that they have another smothering game to show that this Cowboys defense has holes. And Derrick Henry has a big game. And I think that they score 30. And I think the Cowboys Obviously going to be hard for them to completely be shut down, but I'm saying that they score 20. And it's a frustrating day for Dak and the boys. So Ravens win 30-20. Lions Cardinals. Here is another crazy game. We see Marvin Harrison Jr. pop off last week. After, Kyler Murray was like, well, it's not my job to throw him the ball. With that being said, the Lions obviously losing against the Buccaneers last week when they had seen them in the playoffs and they were able to edge them out there in a very close game. I think the Cardinals are ready to make a statement, and I think that they are kind of fueled by the fact that their division isn't looking like as easily the bona fide strongest division. Obviously, you think the Niners would be the top of the NFC. Who knows, after 2 weeks. The Seahawks are undefeated, but it's still kind of like, oh, they don't look like a incredibly dominating team. And this Cardinals team, they're like, well, if we get too far behind, though, we might just be knocked out of the playoffs by a game or two. So I think that they are going to go full-fledged after, the Lions. And it's like, to me, gosh, it's with the Cardinals, I think it's just kind of wild to me, their turnaround. Obviously, their coach, I think, has done a tremendous job. I think he's kept the guys invested in this system. They've brought in people that, are good players, and they're overall a unit that is playing very well. And I think that, BJ Ojulari getting put on IR kind of sucks for them. But it's like, overall, I think that they have a team that, plays well together. The defense, I do think, doesn't have as much talent as you want. But you look at, the offense, and it's like Greg Dortch doing well, which, makes me happy. I think that, he came in at a time when this team was the lowest of lows, has continued to hustle and play. And so he really good. Good O-line. Kyler Murray is looking like he's a man on a mission, this year, where it's like he missed, a large chunk of last year. And now he's healthier than ever. He's able to do his Kyler Murray thing, and he's just such a incredibly tough guy to game plan for, And I think that, James Conner is a very underrated back. I think that he's just kind of a guy that you can give the workload to, and he's going to pound it and pound it and pound it. And obviously, I'm praising the Arizona offense. I think that they have a lot of still untapped potential. But you look at the Lions, and they have struggled offensively. This team where it's like, oh, the run game was really good, but then they couldn't run it super well against the Buccaneers last week. And then, Jameson Williams, kind of a disappearing act last game. And Amon-Ra, has been slightly banged up, even though they say he's healthy now. And I'm kind of disappointed that I haven't seen as much Sam Laporta that I thought I would in his second year. Obviously, the main storyline of this team, though, is Aiden Hutchinson, who has just become kind of a monster. Reminds me of Julius Peppers with his height and length and his ability to just, have so many splash plays. But is he going to be able to do that against a guy that's as elusive as Kyler Murray? And we'll see. Obviously, looking at this, I think with it being in Arizona, it means it's going to be an even closer game. And I think that this is one of those games that could come down to a final field goal. And with that being said, I'm going to predict the game is going to be 20. I think it's going to be 27-24 final score in favor in favor of the Lions. And the only reason for that is that I think that they're just better suited to win these lawn stretching and gritty games. And, with them being, pretty healthy, and obviously the Cardinals, it's a little unknown whether their passing attack, like if it was a 1 week wonder, type of thing. But I think it's going to be a close and fun game to watch. Definitely one worth catching. Then we have 49ers Rams, which I'm not going to lie, I think this would have been a good game had not every single wide receiver gotten hurt on the Rams. Like Cooper Kupp is doubtful. I doubt he's going, which means that it's, Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson. Don't get me wrong, I think Stafford will get them completions and yards because he's good at that, at getting just about anybody the ball, and obviously it's relying on their ability to catch it, but I think that he's the best guy to have for these wide receivers that don't yet have a name for themselves, because he's going to dish the ball all over, because he's got such a talent that it's like, I don't care who I'm throwing it to, I'm going to give them an opportunity to get the ball. And yeah, I don't think Cooper Kupp's going to be a go this week. Puka's on IR, unfortunately. I think that Kobe Parkinson would have to have a huge game, but how is he against the Niners? I just think that overall it's going to be too much for the Rams. And obviously San Fran's got to be pissed about dropping a game last week against the Vikings, giving up a 97-yard touchdown. Hufanga is back. So, they're not going to have any of these like blown safety plays like they did last week. Bosa questionable. I guess I don't really care too much about that. I think they can get pressure from other places as well. And, you obviously still don't have Greenlaw, but I don't think that matters. Fred Warner's still playing as good as anybody at the middle linebacker position, if not the best. So, I'm giving this to the Niners, and I think that they're just going to, I wouldn't say run over the Rams, but it's like they may just run the ball a lot too, with Debo being doubtful. So you have Ayuk and Jennings who are capable, but I think they're going to run the ball a lot, the San Fran, because I think that the Rams have struggled against the run. They lack that guy who's really a stuffer down low since the departure of Donald. But that being said, I think the score is going to be kind of low scoring. I think that they're just not going to give Stafford that many chances. And I think that the Niners score 23, and I think the Rams, they score like 13. Optimistically, obviously. I think that Stafford's too good to keep him out of the end zone an entire game. But we'll see. Now to our Sunday night game, we have Chiefs Falcons, which obviously the Chiefs traveling to Atlanta, kind of a short trip, honestly. And then you have Atlanta, who just happened to win against the Eagles when they were like less than a minute, and then Vic Fangio, for whatever reason, just plays like the exact opposite of how he should, and lets them get sideline throws and then kick a field goal to win it. Like, it was bizarre. I'm like, this isn't a game that Atlanta should have won. They were gifted that win. Kirk Cousins inaccurate. Definitely doesn't look like, the guy we knew. Not to say that he didn't throw some inaccurate stuff, before the injury, but some of the stuff is just really crazy, where it's his guys have to make like great catches on what should be simple completions. I think that if it doesn't get better, they should honestly start Penix. Like, and I mean, maybe that's a little bit of the Kirk Cousins hater coming out, but like I think that Cousins is washed. He's old. I'm sorry, and if he doesn't fully come back from the Achilles and that sort of thing, I think you just have a guy who it's like, this is gonna derail him. And I mean, who knows? Maybe he just doesn't rehab that hard. I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't think Cousins has ever had like that major of an injury like an Achilles, and maybe he just doesn't know. Like I said, he doesn't know how to, rehab it or whatever. When he was in that sort of thing, and it's like, obviously the thing with him was that I mean, he didn't play any preseason, nor did like Rodgers or anything like that. But his Achilles happened later, so who knows? Maybe there's lingering problems there that the Falcons just aren't reporting on him, you know. But it's like with the talent on this team, I'm just like, what is, apparently quarterback was your issue, but it's still your issue. Where it's like you're not playing crazy and you've got great weapons like London's playing well, Mooney's playing well, Ray McLeod I like, and then even Kyle Pitts is doing fine. But it's like you have a really great O line. Some of these throws it's like you weren't even feeling pressure, but I'm kind of going on a rant and a tangent on Kirk Cousins, but it's like I've never been a believer in him. I think he's very overrated. He's just like Dak, where he's a regular season wonder, can get to the playoffs, and that's enticing to some teams. But it's like you've got to find the guy where it's unquestionably that he's going to take you, in this league. And I know that's harsh, but it's like that's why every team can't be a top contending team, is because of their quarterback. So it's like looking at the Chiefs, Rashee Rice back, not injured. Obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire still out, Isaiah Pacheco out, so they have Carson Steele at running back, which I think is wild. He's their, he was their fullback essentially, but now they're plugging him in. They have some really good belief in this guy. I actually really like him too, the whole fish story and whatever else. Samaje Perine, I think, is serviceable, but obviously this team is very well coached. And I'm not saying that they can have anybody and just do well, like that would be impossible. Obviously, Pacheco's a special player, but I think that, with a mind like Mahomes and then Andy Reid and Mahomes working together, it's they can put it together pretty easily, and that sort of thing. And I expect Kelsey to finally be able to like, have a good game. I think that them switching up their left tackle is because of the younger guy committing too many penalties. So I'm Mataya, and them putting in Wanya Morris, and there's no way that they'd put a guy out there that they're like, we don't believe that this guy can't, do the job to protect Mahomes' blind side. Like that's just, there's no way, when they're, a brilliant offensive scheme. And then looking at the defense, Karlaftis, Jones, Tranco, Leo Chanel, Nick Bolton, McDuffie, Reed, and just all of these guys they have on defense, and then Watson on the defense as well. They got the Watson squared thing going on offense and defense on this team, and it's just like, this is a tough team, and I think this is a huge trap game with the way that it ended last week. Obviously, Atlanta, to me, their defense is as good as any. They brought in Judon to get pressure. I don't think he's going to have an easy time getting pressure on, then it's like Grady Jarrett. I don't think he's done much this year. And it's like you do have a great secondary with, the weakest link being Mike Hughes, in my opinion. I think D. Alford is doing really good, and it's like overall this defense is special in its own way, where it's like they play very sound schematic football, on the Falcons, which has kept them in games, even though it's like if you look at this team on paper, oh, these guys should be winning games left and right. They should be able to command games, but they aren't. The Falcons are performing under expectations offensively to the point where it's like, oh, it is a toss up whether they win. And it's like the only, and that sort of thing. So with that being said, I'm giving this game to the Chiefs. It's obviously their first game away from home, but I do remember, away game Mahomes from the playoffs last year, and it doesn't phase him. He's a great. He's a great, and he's going up against Kirk, who sucks in primetime and got a lucky primetime win last week. So I honestly feel like I think that, the Chiefs defense is going to really like stick it to Kirk to be able to do well this game. And I don't think he's going to be able to do it. So I'm giving the Chiefs the win. I think they win 31-17 in a statement win to go to 3-0. Now, I know this one was kind of longer, you guys. I didn't kind of mean for it to go as long, but hopefully it was kind of entertaining. With that being said, if you have any comments or, questions or opinions, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. But as always, thank you all for watching. And as always, go Pack Go.